Jason's voice trembled on the phone. "She said you called her greedy." He blurted out before I could even say hello. I froze. My brother never raised his voice, not even when we were kids. "What are you talking about?" I asked, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. "Emily," he said, "she told me you insulted her, that you refused to help us and said her wedding dreams were ridiculous." My heart dropped. Just a day ago, life had felt simple. I'd spent the morning finishing a project at work, thinking about what to get them as a wedding gift, maybe something meaningful, like the watch Dad gave me when I graduated. Now, everything felt upside down. "I never said that," I whispered. "Jason, you know me better than that." He didn't answer. I heard the muffled sound of someone in the background, Emily's voice, soft but sharp, feeding him words I couldn't hear. Then he said something that would echo in my mind for weeks. "If you cared about me, you'd want me to have the wedding I deserve. Emily says you're being selfish." Selfish? I stared out the kitchen window. The world outside was calm. Children on bicycles, the hum of a lawnmower, sunlight flickering across the grass. But inside, everything had changed. I had always been the one to help. When Jason needed money for his car repairs, I sent it. When he lost his job, I covered his rent. Every time he'd say the same thing, "I'll pay you back when I can." He never did. I didn't care. He was my brother. But now, hearing him defend her, hearing the coldness in his tone, something inside me cracked. "Jason, I can't give $15,000 for your wedding. That's not something I can just pull out of thin air. It's not fair to ask that." He sighed, frustrated. "You make good money. Emily just wants a special day. Why are you being like this?" "I'm being realistic." "She thinks you're jealous." He shot back. The words hit harder than I expected. I could have argued, screamed, begged him to see reason, but I didn't. I knew anything I said would only twist back against me, so I stayed quiet. He hung up without saying goodbye. The silence afterward was deafening. I stood there, surrounded by the ordinary, the smell of coffee, the ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, but nothing felt normal anymore. For the first time in my life, my brother wasn't on my side. That night, I sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through old photos of us, Jason's arm around me at our parents' anniversary dinner, our goofy smiles at the beach. I could almost hear his laugh again, that bright, genuine laugh that used to light up every room. And then, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "I didn't want things to get awkward between us, but if you change your mind, we'd still appreciate your help. Jason is under a lot of stress. It would mean a lot to him and to me." No apology, no acknowledgement of the lie she had told him. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked out onto my porch. The evening air was cool, still. My neighborhood was quiet, except for the faint sound of someone's TV playing a love song. For a moment, I let myself feel it. The hurt, the disbelief, the loss of something I couldn't quite name. I had lost my place in my brother's life. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was warm, careful. "Honey, Emily told us about the misunderstanding. Maybe you should just help a little. You don't want tension before the wedding." I closed my eyes. "Mom, she didn't tell you everything. She said you refused without even thinking. You know how emotional brides can be." I wanted to scream, but instead, I breathed. Slowly. Emily had woven her story perfectly, one where I was the villain. By the weekend, I stopped receiving texts from Jason. Then came the photos. Smiling faces, cake pastings, dress fittings. Everyone was tagged, except me. That was when the heartbreak shifted into something else, something quieter, stronger. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I just wanted the truth to have its moment. Because truth always finds its way out, no matter how carefully it's buried. So I waited. And as I watched the sun set that evening, I promised myself one thing. The next time Emily's name crossed my phone screen, it wouldn't be because she wanted money. It would be because the truth had finally come knocking. And when it did, I would be ready. The first time I realized Jason was drifting away was months before the wedding. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Back then, our Sunday dinners at Mom's were still a tradition. He'd show up late, but always with a grin, a bottle of soda under his arm, teasing me about how serious I looked. We'd sit across from each other, trading jokes, finishing each other's sentences. That night, he brought Emily for the first time. She walked in with a flawless smile and a bouquet for Mom. Polite, charming, perfect in every way. Everyone adored her instantly. I did too, for a while. "Your brother's finally growing up," Mom had whispered as we cleared the dishes. I'd laughed, not knowing how much that would soon hurt. Emily's charm was easy. Too easy. She had a way of making you feel like you'd known her forever, until you said something she didn't like. Then, behind the sweetness, her eyes hardened just a little, like glass catching light. I noticed it once when Jason mentioned our annual hiking trip. "Oh, you still do that?" she'd said, laughing lightly. "That's cute." Jason looked at her, uncertain, then shrugged. "Yeah, we've done it since college." "Well, maybe this year we'll skip it," she said, looping her arm through his. "You'll have enough going on with wedding planning." I brushed it off at the time, but looking back, that was the first thing she took from us. Small traditions, small connections, piece by piece. After that, texts slowed down, calls became shorter. Every time I asked to meet up, Jason said, "We're busy with the wedding," or "Emily's family needs help this weekend." Still, I didn't blame her. I wanted to believe she was just excited. Until the day Jason called asking for my advice. He'd been offered a new job, a great one, but it was across the country. "Emily's not sure about the move," he told me. "Her parents live nearby, and she wants to be close." "Jason, it's your career," I said. "You've worked for this." "I know," he sighed, "but she thinks we'll get better support here." That was when I started to understand. Emily's world didn't have space for anyone else's choices, not even Jason's. After our argument about the money, I couldn't stop replaying those moments. The tiny ways she'd built walls between us while smiling the whole time. Then one evening, a month after the fight, my cousin Lily dropped by. She was holding her phone, eyes wide. She said, "You should see this." It was a social post. Emily at a bridal boutique, surrounded by friends. The caption read, "So thankful for my amazing family and their support. Couldn't do this without them, especially Jason's sister, who's been such an inspiration." I frowned. "What?" Lily handed me the phone. Scroll down. There, in the comments, someone had written, "Didn't she refuse to help with the wedding?" Emily's reply sat beneath it. "She's just been going through a tough time. Not everyone can be generous when they're struggling." My stomach turned. She wasn't just twisting the story privately, she was rewriting it publicly, painting me as someone bitter and broke. I tried to laugh it off. "That's fine," I said, forcing a smile. But Lily could see it in my eyes. "You don't deserve that," she whispered.
That night, I sat at my desk long after midnight, staring at an old photo of me and Jason when we were kids. He was missing a front tooth, grinning proudly with a fishing rod in hand. I remember how he'd fallen in the river that day, and I jumped in after him without thinking. We'd always protected each other. That was our bond. Until now. I started digging through old messages, trying to understand where it had gone wrong. That's when I noticed something odd. Months before the fight, Jason had texted me about buying a house. He said, "Emily wants something big. I'm not sure we can afford it, but she thinks your advice would help." I'd replied with a budget breakdown, helping him figure out what was realistic. But scrolling through now, I realized he'd never followed any of it. A new message popped into my mind, one from Mom weeks later. Emily said Jason found a great deal thanks to your advice. Except I hadn't given him the one they used. Curiosity turned to unease. I checked public property listings for their area. Something didn't sit right. And there it was. The house wasn't in Jason's name alone. It was co-signed with Emily's cousin, a man Jason had never even mentioned. Why would she hide that? The pieces started fitting together in a way that made my chest tighten. The money request, the pressure, the lies. It wasn't about a wedding. It was about control. Emily wanted to make sure every part of Jason's life and his family revolved around her. And she was winning. Until now. Because now I had something she didn't know I'd seen. As I closed my laptop, the truth settled in. Quiet, but solid. The betrayal hadn't started with the $15,000 demand. It had been building, one small manipulation at a time. And if I wanted my brother back, I'd have to show him what he couldn't see. Not by fighting, not by shouting, by letting the truth do the talking. I leaned back in my chair, watching dawn light spill across the floor. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. And that was far more dangerous. By the time summer came, the air between me and Jason was colder than winter. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Every text I sent was met with silence. Every memory I tried to hold on to slipped further away. But pain, I've learned, is a teacher. And that silence taught me more than any apology could. It taught me how to listen, not to the noise, but to what was missing. I started paying attention to the way Mom avoided mentioning the wedding, to how my aunt's tone changed whenever Emily's name came up, to the whispers that followed family gatherings I was no longer invited to. And slowly, a pattern began to form. Emily was careful. She never said anything directly about me, but she didn't have to. She planted hints, half-truths, smiles that led people to their own conclusions. "She must be busy," she'd say if someone asked about me. Or, "We all have our limits. I understand." Every word was designed to sound kind, and that made it worse. Still, I didn't fight back. I waited. Then one morning, as I was cleaning up some old files on my laptop, I found a folder labeled Jason's resume. I'd helped him update it last year when he was looking for that new job. I opened it, more out of nostalgia than anything else. Inside was another document, one I didn't remember saving. It was an email draft, written from my account, but never sent. The subject line read, "To Jason's employer, urgent concern." The body was short, professional, and fake. It accused Jason of mishandling work funds and suggested the company reconsider his upcoming promotion. I stared at the screen, stunned. My name sat beneath the words, typed neatly, as the sender. Someone had accessed my old email account. I checked the date 3 months ago, right around the time Jason stopped calling. A chill ran through me. I clicked the metadata and saw the IP address. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even my city. It was the same small town where Emily's parents lived. I didn't need proof beyond that. My gut knew. She'd faked that email. Probably showed it to Jason, convincing him that I was trying to ruin his career. That was how she'd driven the final wedge between us. For a long time, I just sat there. Not angry, not crying, just quiet. Then something shifted. I realized she'd used my honesty, my trust, my history with Jason, everything good, as a weapon. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid of her anymore. She had built her image on lies. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed to let her truth collapse on its own. So I made a plan. It started with kindness, the kind she couldn't fake. I called my mom first. "I've been thinking about the wedding," I told her gently. "Maybe I should reach out to Emily. It's time to make peace." Mom's relief was instant. "That's wonderful, honey. She'll appreciate that." I could hear the hope in her voice, and I meant it. I did want peace. But peace doesn't always mean silence. Sometimes it means finally telling the truth. So I texted Emily. "Hey, Emily, I'd love to talk sometime. Just us. No tension. I think it's time we clear the air." Her reply came fast. "Sure, let's meet at the cafe near the park tomorrow." The next day I got there early. The cafe was quiet, sunlight spilling through tall windows, the hum of espresso machines filling the air. When she walked in, she looked surprised to see me smiling. "Emily," I said, standing, "it's good to see you." She hesitated. "You too. I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I figured it's time," I said, gesturing for her to sit. For a while, we talked politely about the wedding, the weather, small things that meant nothing. Then I said, softly, "I found something strange on my computer." Her eyes flickered, just for a second. "Oh?" I continued, "An old email. It was written under my name, about Jason. But it wasn't mine, though. The system showed a different location." Her hand tightened on her cup. "That's odd." I agreed. "Because the location matched your parents' town." The cafe seemed to grow quieter. Even the background chatter faded. She forced a small laugh. "That's just coincidence. Anyone could—" "I didn't say it was you," I said gently, "but I did tell Jason about it. He's the only one who can clear things up now." Her face froze, the confidence draining from it. I didn't add that I hadn't actually spoken to Jason yet. I just let the weight of the words hang there, calm and steady. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be spoken aloud. After a long silence, she smiled again. But this time, it didn't reach her eyes. "You're very clever," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "I just stopped being afraid." We sat there for another moment, the air thick with unspoken things. Then she stood, muttered something polite, and walked out. Through the window, I watched her cross the street, her posture stiff, her phone already in her hand. She was calling someone, probably Jason. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Because now, she was the one feeling uncertain, the one wondering how much I knew. The truth had started to move, quietly but surely, and there was no stopping it now. By the time I finished my coffee, I knew this wasn't over, but it didn't need to be loud. Justice, I realized, can be silent too. And silence was finally on my side.
Jason showed up 2 days later. He didn't call first, didn't text. I just heard the sound of his car in the driveway, the slam of a door, then his shadow through the glass. For a second, I froze. I'd imagined this moment for months, rehearsed what I'd say if he ever came. But when I opened the door and saw him standing there, all of that disappeared. He looked tired, not angry, just worn down. "Hey," I said quietly. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded and stepped aside. He walked into the living room, looking around like it was a place he half remembered. The silence stretched between us, heavy but not hostile. "Finally," he said, "Emily told me about your little meeting." I stayed calm. "Did she?" "She said you accused her of something, that you're trying to stir things up again." I took a slow breath. I didn't accuse her of anything. I told her the truth. I found something on my computer that shouldn't have been there. He rubbed his jaw, uneasy. "An email, right?" She told me. "Said you must have misunderstood." "I didn't," I said softly. "It wasn't my writing, Jason, and it came from a location linked to her family's home." He looked down. "That's hard to believe." I nodded. "I know it is." For a second, neither of us spoke. Outside, the sound of a lawnmower drifted faintly through the window. It was one of those small, ordinary noises that somehow made everything else feel louder inside. I moved to the coffee table and picked up the framed photo sitting there. The one from our trip years ago. The lake, the fishing rods, the summer sun on our faces. I handed it to him. "Do you remember that day?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, you pulled me out of the river after I fell in." "You trusted me then," I said quietly. His eyes lifted to mine. There was no anger, only confusion, and something that looked like pain. "I still do," he said, but his voice faltered halfway through the sentence. I took a deep breath. "I need you to listen, not as Emily's fiancé, but as my brother." He nodded slowly. I told him everything. How I found the file, how I traced it, how it was created months ago while I was at work. I didn't exaggerate or accuse. I just laid out the facts, one by one. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, jaw tightening, eyes flickering as pieces started falling into place. When I finished, the room went quiet again. Jason set the photo down carefully. He said at last, "She told me you sent that email, said you were jealous of how well I was doing. She even showed me a screenshot." "Then she must have forged it. You know I'd never do that." He looked at me for a long moment. I wanted to believe that, but she was convincing. "I know," I said. "She's good at that." He sat back on the couch, running his hand through his hair. "Why would she do this? What would she even get out of it?" "Control," I said simply. "If she could isolate you, she could keep you loyal to her. It's not about money anymore, Jason. It's about ownership." He flinched, not in anger, in realization. Then he whispered, "She told me you didn't want to be part of the wedding because you thought she wasn't good enough." I shook my head. "I didn't say that. I wanted you to be happy. I just couldn't buy it." His shoulders sank. I think I knew something was off. I just didn't want to admit it. We sat there in the quiet, two people surrounded by the wreckage of what used to be simple love and trust. Then Jason asked, "What do I do now?" I hesitated. "That's up to you. But whatever happens, don't fight her. Don't make it ugly. The truth already started working. You just have to let it finish." He nodded, eyes distant. "She's been nervous lately, keeps checking her phone. Maybe she knows it's catching up." He stood and looked toward the door. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me," he replied. When he left, the sun had dipped low, turning everything gold and fragile. I watched his car disappear down the road and felt something inside me loosen, a weight finally lifting. I didn't know what he'd say to Emily or how she'd react. That wasn't my fight anymore. But later that night, as I sat by the window, my phone buzzed. A message from Jason. It was a photo, his hand holding the same framed photo I'd given him earlier. Underneath, he'd written, "I finally see it. I'm sorry." I didn't need to ask what he'd seen, because the truth wasn't just about the email, or the money, or the manipulation. It was about everything she'd taken, and what he was finally taking back. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of triumph, out of peace. Because sometimes the most powerful confrontation isn't a battle at all. It's just the moment when someone finally opens their eyes.
The truth didn't explode. It unraveled, quietly, thread by thread. A week after Jason's visit, my mother called. Her voice sounded hesitant, careful. "Honey, I don't know what happened," she said, "but Jason and Emily canceled the wedding." I froze. "They what?" "He didn't say much," she continued, "just that things weren't what he thought they were." For a long moment, I said nothing. I felt 100 emotions at once: relief, sadness, guilt, even pity. None of it settled. That evening, Jason came over again. He looked calmer this time, almost lighter. But there was something in his eyes, a mixture of exhaustion and regret. "She admitted it," he said quietly. I waited. "She said she forged that email, told me she just wanted to make sure you didn't interfere with our plans, that she thought you'd eventually forgive me and no one would ever know." My chest tightened. "So it was about control." He nodded. "And money. Mostly the money. She said her parents had overextended themselves. She thought if she made you look bad, you'd feel guilty and pay up." The words stung, even though I'd already suspected them. Jason sat down, staring at his hands. I kept asking why she didn't just tell me the truth. She said she was scared. Scared that if she saw how much she'd been manipulating things, I'd leave. He looked up at me. She was right. Silence filled the room. Not heavy, just final. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from sincerity. "For believing her, for not trusting you, for letting her come between us." I took a slow breath. "You were in love. That's not something to be sorry for, but you have to learn from it." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I already have." For a long while, we didn't speak. The only sound was the ticking of the clock and the soft hum of the fridge, ordinary noises that suddenly felt like the world breathing again. Finally, I asked, "What happens now?" "I told her it's over," he said. "She packed her things this morning. I think she's staying with her parents for a while." I studied him. "Do you still care about her?" He hesitated. "Part of me does, but I can't go back to something built on lies." That honesty hurt more than anger ever could. Later that night, after he left, I sat by the window again. The sky outside was deep blue, fading toward dawn. I thought about Emily, about the version of her I'd met that first night, the one who seemed perfect, kind, radiant. I wondered when the line between who she was and who she pretended to be had disappeared. The next day, I got a message, a number I didn't recognize. It was her. She wrote, "I know you think I'm the villain, but I didn't plan for things to go this far. I just wanted Jason to have everything he dreamed of. I made mistakes. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. There it was, the apology I thought I wanted. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the ruins of something that should never have existed.
I didn't reply right away. Instead, I closed my eyes and remembered everything that had happened. The lies, the silence, the anger, the truth. Then I typed one line. I hope you learn what love really is someday. And I sent it. No insults, no revenge, just truth. Plain, quiet, and final. The following weekend, Jason and I went for a walk along the lake where we used to fish as kids. The same breeze, the same smell of pine. For the first time in a long time, it felt like coming home. He told me he was thinking of taking time off work, maybe traveling, maybe starting over somewhere new. He said, I need to remember who I was before all this. I replied, you'll figure it out. As we stood there, watching the sun sink behind the water, he asked, do you forgive her? I thought about it. I said, I don't know, honestly. Some things don't deserve forgiveness right away, but I don't hate her. That's enough for now. He nodded. And me? That question caught me off guard. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the brother who doubted me, but the one who had come back. I said, I already forgave you. The wind rippled across the lake, carrying our reflections with it. Two people changed, but still standing. As we turned to leave, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Not the kind that comes from winning, but from understanding. Some truths hurt, some heal, and some simply teach you who you really are. That night, when I got home, I found another message from Emily. No words this time, just a photo. A wedding invitation, torn neatly in half, resting beside a ring. No caption, no explanation. For a moment, I just stared at it, the glow of the phone lighting the quiet room. Then I set it down, turned off the light, and let the silence hold everything that didn't need to be said. Because sometimes closure isn't about answers. It's about finally being able to stop asking the questions.
The morning after Emily's last message, the world felt strangely still. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just finished. Sunlight spilled through the window, warming the same table where months ago my brother had asked for $15,000, and I'd felt everything fall apart. Now that same light touched the untouched mug of coffee in front of me. Steam rose softly, disappearing into the air. That's how it felt, everything that once burned, now fading into something gentler. Jason stopped by that afternoon. No talk about the past this time. Just a knock, a smile, and 2 takeout coffees. We sat outside on the porch, watching the street shimmer under the autumn sun. He said, I've found the house keys she took. She left them in my mailbox. That's something, I said. He smiled faintly. It's weird how endings don't always come with noise. We both laughed, quietly, like 2 people who finally understood what silence was for. He told me he was planning to move downtown, take up a smaller place, start over. He'd been offered a job transfer, something new, something far from the memories that used to hold him. You'll do great, I said. You always figure things out when it matters. He looked at me, his expression softer than I'd seen in months. You really believe that? I do. For a long time, we just sat there, saying nothing. There wasn't much left to fix, just space to breathe. When he finally left, I walked back inside, paused by the desk, and saw a small stack of letters I'd been meaning to sort.
Among them was a thin envelope, no return address, but familiar handwriting. Emily. My instinct told me to throw it away, but something stopped me. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to say thank you, not for what happened, but for not becoming cruel when you had every reason to. Jason told me you wished me peace. I'm trying to find it now." Her words weren't an excuse. They weren't even closure. But they felt honest, finally. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the drawer. Not to remember her, but to remember the lesson. That afternoon, I drove out to the old lake again, the same place Jason and I had stood when the truth first began to heal. The water was still, carrying the colors of the sky, gold, silver, and the faintest blue. I tossed a small pebble into it, watching the ripples spread outward, one after another, until they disappeared. That's what the whole thing had been. Ripples. A single moment of dishonesty that touched everything around it until truth finally quieted the surface again. As I stood there, a soft breeze brushed against my face. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of pine and the faint memory of what used to be. Somewhere behind me, a child laughed, bright, free, alive. It made me smile. Life keeps moving no matter how much we think it stops when we're hurt. On the drive back, I passed by the church that was supposed to host their wedding. The banner was gone now, the flowers wilted. But across the lawn, a new couple was taking photos, smiling, laughing, twirling in the golden light. It didn't make me bitter. It made me grateful. Because love, real love, wasn't about control or image or money. It was about trust. And once lost, trust could only be rebuilt through truth. That night, I sat at my desk again, this time with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. No letter to send, no apology to read, just words for myself. I wrote, "Let this be the lesson that peace doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from choosing not to become like them." I folded that note and slipped it inside the same drawer as Emily's letter. Two sides of the same story. One of deceit, one of choice. Later, as the night settled around me, I turned off the lights and looked outside. The street was calm, the windows glowing softly in the distance. Somewhere, my brother was starting fresh. Somewhere, she was learning what love really meant. And me, I was free. Free of the anger, the resentment, the need for payback. Because the truth had done what revenge never could. It set everyone exactly where they belonged. As the last bit of light faded, I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, "Some endings don't need applause, just peace." Then I smiled, small, real, and enough. The camera of life would fade out there, with the window glowing faintly and a quiet song in the background. And that final image, the calm after the storm, would say everything words no longer needed to. Because the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to others, it's how you choose to rise after they've fallen away.